You're watching the legal breakdown, Glenn. It looks like Pete Hegseth has just gotten some bad news at the hands of a federal judge in court. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, Brian. So what happened was Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense decided to try to revoke some of the Pentagon press passes, specifically for some New York Times reporters, because, Hegseth didn't like the way
Damn, this is bad thing. Even in such a good position you are in the government, you are doing all these bullshit things.
they were reporting what was going on in the war against Iran, the decisions that were being made by military leadership. And there was also some reporting that Hegseth really didn't like the unflattering photos some of the journalists were taking of him. So he pulled those Pentagon press passes, and the New York Times went to court and won a victory over Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense, by extension, the Trump administration, saying it's unconstitutional to just summarily pull press passes and deny those reporters access to the reporting that lots of other reporters have access to. By extension, it is denying access to the American people of reporting by, for example, the New York Times. So it was a resounding victory. And
Damn, this is what it is happening. You see, American people, are you seeing all these things that is happening? Pete Hegseth, damn, what are your thoughts onto this man?
Judge Friedman, a federal district judge in Washington, D.C., ordered that they rescind the new Pentagon press policy and basically put the old one back into place that doesn't
All right,
violate the First Amendment right
true.
of free press,
Okay,
right of its own viewpoint, which is a free speech protection. And so, what did the Pentagon do? Instead of complying with Judge Friedman's order, they blatantly, even cavalierly, violated it. And let me just read one short passage from the new ruling from Judge Friedman, in which he was pretty hacked off that the Pentagon and Pete Hegseth were cavalierly violating his order to.
damn, they violated the judge's order. This is the biggest thing ever happened. What are the consequences of doing all this?
Restore the press credentials of the New York Times reporters. Here is a little bit of what the judge said.
Okay,
In short, the Department of Defense has responded to the court's order, the court's express instruction to return the Pentagon press passes previously held by the Times journalists and restore the access to the Pentagon that came with those credentials, those press passes. They responded by instead cutting off that access for all journalists.
all.
The response flouts the court's explicit directives and disregards the constitutional
Damn, all
principles
journalists.
at the heart of this court's opinion. It's pretty flippin' outrageous, Brian,
Yeah, it is outrageous.
that they respond to a court order directing that they stop violating the First Amendment protections of speech, of freedom of the press, of the New York Times reporters. They respond by expanding their unconstitutional conduct to take everybody's press passes and access away. And Judge Friedman expressly compared what Hegseth and DOD did to, quote, an autocracy. Those are
Okay.
very strong words. And
Yeah.
then we have to see whether Judge Friedman follows it up with very strong action.
Autocracy, that's what saying. Damn, no.
Can you talk about those words in particular? Because that was the most striking part of what I read in this decision. To basically be a federal judge and accuse the federal government of acting autocratic, it doesn't feel like a small step
Nah,
for a
it is
judge to make.
not.
And if I'm, you and I have done 700 episodes of Legal Breakdown. It's very, very, very rare, at least in my opinion, from my vantage, that we've heard federal judges or any judges speak about this administration in that way.
Yeah, let me use the words that Judge Friedman used first, and then we can
Okay, Judge, you just sum up the words. That that is what it is. Listen to these words.
unpack them a little. He said, the protection of the freedoms enshrined in the First Amendment is a fundamental principle of the American government. The First Amendment means that the government has no power to
Oh,
thwart the process of free discussion, to abridge the freedoms
Okay.
necessary to make that process work. The judge goes on to say, with the issuance of the interim policy, that is the new policy that
Okay. The new interim policy.
basically expanded the unconstitutionality of what
Yeah.
they were ordered, to stop doing. With the issuance of that new policy, the Department of Defense has tried to achieve an unconstitutional result. The curtailment of First Amendment rights is dangerous at any time,
Anytime. Yeah. Oh, they're saying amendment rights is dangerous at any time and.
and even more so in a time of war.
Oh.
Suppression of political speech is the mark of an autocracy, not a democracy,
Yes.
as the
Yes.
framers recognized when they drafted the First Amendment. That is a pretty direct assertion that Pete Hegseth and company are acting as an autocracy, not a democracy. And
This
Brian,
is.
now we are awaiting next steps.
This is, let me tell you one thing. If you know what is autocracy, what is democracy, autocracy, democracy, both are totally, totally different things. This is bad.
Just want to offer a quick note for everybody who's watching. If you'd like to stay on top of all legal news as it breaks, the best way to do that is to subscribe to both of our channels. I'm going to put those links in the post description of this video. Great way to support us, great way to support independent media. And of course, it is and always will be 100% free. So if you're not yet subscribed, please do us a favor and subscribe. Glenn, on this point, does it look like this is adequate pushback against this White House being able to cherry pick whatever reporters can cover them, basically creating state media in effect, by pushing out anybody who's going to offer critical coverage and only allowing people in who are going to heap onto them positive coverage?
Is this adequate pushback? My answer would be not just no, but hell no.
Oh,
Because all of the strongly worded legal opinions in the world will mean nothing to this runaway corrupt presidential administration.
really correct presidential administration. This is the word of the 2026 word of the year. This is,
Unless there is accountability, unless these people start
there is
to be,
no
held
accountability.
accountable by the courts. The courts have announced you're acting as an autocracy, not a democracy. To which I say, okay, Judge, what the hell are you going to do about it? There are three words
Okay.
that summarize what courts should be doing next: contempt, contempt, and contempt. They
Ooh.
have the power to enforce their court orders with contempt. Civil contempt, which can involve fines,
Okay.
civil and criminal contempt, both of which can involve jailing
Oh,
government
bro.
officials
All
who
right.
are intentionally violating, flouting court orders to stop acting unconstitutionally. You don't think if Pete Hegseth ended up in an orange jumpsuit sitting in a cell at the D.C. jail while, he had every opportunity to purge the contempt? When you lock somebody up and you try to compel compliance with a court order, you know what a judge is doing? Figuratively, that judge is handing the keys to the jail cell.
This is the real news we are listening, we are seeing, we are watching right now. The all news that are BS talks and everything else that is not the news that are into the legs, into the foots of the administration. Okay, this is the news.
To the contemnor, to the person who is in contempt. And the judge is announcing, look, Hegseth, you can open the jail cell door and walk out at any time. All you have to do is purge the contempt and comply with my court orders. Brian, how we have not already seen countless executive branch officials sitting in jail cells to force the executive branch, a co-equal branch of government, to comply with the lawful orders of another co-equal branch that has the authority to issue those orders. It's beyond me. And I'll tell you, every time we get another strongly worded opinion, I first kind of, silently applaud it, and then I become even more frustrated because it doesn't seem like the courts are willing to take it to the next step and actually compel compliance with those orders.
This is what it is. It makes me angry as well. I think every true patriotic American citizen feels angry while watching or listening or seeing this type of orders that are just not the constitutional, true constitutionally right in the way.
I'm thinking of two reasons why we might not see some stronger action by these courts, and let me know if you agree with either one of them. First is that they continue to offer up this presumption of regularity to the executive branch, like this assumption that because the federal government has been acting in good faith for decades preceding this administration, that they should continue to heap deference onto this administration even now, even despite the fact that they don't deserve it. And the second is that there is a world where I think maybe some of these courts and some of these judges are afraid because they know what happens at the hands of an administration that is perfectly content to sic its supporters on courts, on prosecutors, on attorneys, on judges, and these people. Sure, they wear robes and they're in these impressive positions, but they're of the community. They've got families, they've got kids who go to schools, they've got wives and husbands who are at home, who have other jobs. They have phone numbers and addresses that are publicly available, and
This is this is what it is. This is the real truth. Real truth we are listening right here. No one in the real media, the legacy public media that you talk about, watching or talking like this real truth. Nobody.
don't want to subject themselves to a figurative but also literal mob at the hands of a president who is perfectly content to throw the entire book at anybody who he feels has wronged him. And that doesn't mean just judges. I mean, he's done it. If he's going to do it against Marjorie Taylor Greene, then and Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens, then clearly no judge is off limits. And so those are just my thoughts. I'm curious whether you agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, so first let me take on the presumption of regularity, which you accurately, characterized. That is because federal prosecutors, DOJ lawyers, whether criminal or civil,
Department of Justice lawyers we are talking about right here. Let's see. Let's see.
usually don't go about lying to the court and misrepresenting things to the court. So over time, and I was a federal prosecutor for 30 years, we have built up the trust of the judges, the federal judiciary, so we enjoy a presumption of regularity when we go into court and say, Your Honor, here is the state of affairs with respect to the issue that's being litigated. Now, ultimately, we're going to have to hold an evidentiary hearing and we're going to have to prove what we are proffering to the court. A proffer is just when you say what the evidence is and what you expect it to show in a future hearing.
This is the explanation of the word proffer. So if you guys not from the legal background, this is hard for you to understand few of the words. Few of the words are already described in this video. If you're not getting few of the words, you can simply Google it. And
We get a presumption of regularity. The court accepts that as true and accurate, but those courts that have taken up that issue of the presumption of regularity in recent months, really during the entire first year of the second Trump term, have said, no, presumption of regularity is done, dead, out the window. Specifically up in New Jersey when they were litigating issues surrounding the unlawful and unconstitutional appointment of Elena Haba, that's in the Federal District of New Jersey. A federal judge said, this storied U.S. Attorney's Office, the New Jersey U.S. Attorney's Office, has spent decades and generations building up the presumption of regularity, and you people, this is the Trump 30 DOJ lawyers that they're sending in the court, you people have destroyed it in a year. So I don't think the presumption of regularity carries the day. I would be surprised if any judges still apply the presumption of regularity to these DOJ lawyers who are going in and getting.
this is what it is, guys. The rule, all of the amendments are not in the place right now. Not in the place. They're just doing things by their own way, just the way they like it to happen, just the way they want to be it done.
Caught in lies and misrepresentations. But so I don't think that's it. Let's shift to your second point, and I think it's an excellent one, which is there is a fear among the judiciary. Now, a fear of retaliation against them and their families personally, yes. But I think there's another kind of, I would call it a concern, not necessarily a fear.
Yeah.
The federal judiciary doesn't have an army. it doesn't have its own police force to enforce its court orders. And when they see the executive branch intentionally and repeatedly defying those court orders, I think judges get concerned that, for example, Judge Friedman can hold Pete Hegseth in contempt and ordered him jailed until he purges the contempt
This is what be happening. Pete Hegseth can be serving the jail time, okay?
and complies with the court orders. But then you're going to need some, armed law enforcement types to carry that out if Pete Hegseth kind of stands in the Pentagon with all of his, military troops around him saying, yeah, make me, come and get me. Judge Freeman ain't going to send his clerk out to go lock up Pete
No one's clerk is going out to lock up Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth has military, police, top one commandos, and everything. It is just what it is. If you're a powerful person, nobody, even though the Jeffrey Epstein case, if you are related in that, nobody is going to testify against you.
Hegseth. So, yes, the United States Marshals Service is the federal law enforcement agency that is tasked by law with enforcing federal court orders. So, if they were, taking their oath of loyalty to the Constitution seriously,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
U.S.
yeah, yeah.
Marshals Service generally does, in my experience, I worked with them for decades,
Okay.
they would go and they would take Pete Hegseth into custody and they would deliver him to the D.C. jail.
One main thing is here. If this does not happen, you understand, we are not in a democracy at all. This is, you know what it is, you know.
Jail so that he could, be held in contempt and jailed until he purged the contempt and complied with the court's order. But I do think there's a concern among the judiciary that, on the sort of power front, this is not really a fair fight because we may
Yeah,
be
it
a
is not. It
co-equal
is
branch
not.
of government, but we don't have the kind of muscle
No,
that the
no, no,
executive branch, another
no.
co-equal branch of government, has. They have to
Yes,
basically abide by our court orders and deliver
true,
themselves,
true,
in
true.
essence, because the Marshal Service is a component of the executive branch. They would have to deliver themselves to the jail cell. Do you think
Yeah.
Pete Hegseth is the kind of guy who cares about legality or just the kind of guy who cares about lethality? I'm going to
Yeah.
go with the latter.
Yeah. Well, look, we will, of course, stay on top of any updates we get here as it relates to Pete Hegseth, as it relates to this press policy and being
Yes.
able to accurately cover what happens in our own federal government and, of course, what happens in the courts. So for those who are watching, to stay on top of all legal news, the best way to do that is to subscribe to both of our channels. I'm going to put those links right here on the screen and also in the post description. Again, 100% free to subscribe, but a great way to support us and independent media. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.
Thank you for watching, guys. This is what it is. I always love the individual journalist rather than the legacy media, okay? So always be with me. Subscribe and follow me. Comment your thoughts.